In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to do some basic rigging in Maya. I'm not going to create a character. I'm just going to use some of these preset characters. In the animals, I'm going to use this big fish. And I have it now. And now it's really large. I'm going to punch out a little bit so you can see. And I don't need it this large. So I'm going to select it and just scale it down. And I'll scale it down to about the size of the grid. And punch back in. Okay, so that is going to be my character, and I will be rigging this. Next thing I want to do is change the way I'm viewing this. I'm going to view it like this, with this little quadrant view. And I'm going to switch my environment to rigging. And then I want to be able to see inside this, so I'm going to be using the X-ray view. So each of these, I'm going to turn on that X-ray view so I can see inside. And then I'm going to be creating the rig, and that starts with creating some joints. So I'm currently in this. I'm going to switch over to rigging, and then I'm going to select this joint tool. Now I have the joint tool, and I want to create some joints that go down this, like bones of the fish. Do not use this 3/4 view or your perspective view to do your rigging. You should do it from an orthographic view. So I'm going to view from the top here and click one in the middle there, and then maybe one about midway through, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit and do one at the tail. And then you can see it there, and then I'm going to hit enter. So it is complete, but it is in the wrong space or place. I want to move it actually up a little higher. So I can get my move tool, and I'm going to move it up using that control, and I'm just moving that first joint, and you'll notice that here it has a hierarchy. Joint 1 controls joint 2, and joint 2 controls joint 3. Now it's not bound to the fish just yet. I will do that later. So right now it has just created the rig itself, but it's not controlling anything else. And then I want to make sure that my joints are properly oriented. So I can come over to skeleton, and I can choose orient joint. Click this little box here. And then here are the settings. But I want to be able to see how these joints are oriented. They're X, Y, and Z. So I can click this toggle local axis visibility, and then I get these little marks that show which direction they are oriented. I'll select the second one so you can see that. So you can see my X, Y, and Z there. So we can see it. And you can see that X is pointing down the whole thing. So it's pointing down and then all the way to the end. Let me select 3, and I'm going to turn on that visibility and then punch in here. But you can see that here X was pointing to X, but then this one is pointing out that way. For this particular rig, it doesn't really matter because that is that last joint. But for other rigs, it would matter. So sometimes these joints are not properly oriented. So we do want to make sure they're properly oriented. So for this, I can just turn off orient joint to world and then click apply, and then it would be in the proper direction. And click orient to world, click apply, and now there. But if I wanted to change the orientation of a joint, I can click that, and under skeleton, orient joint. And then currently it is orient to world, but I can say, well, I don't want to orient to world. I want to change that direction. And then you can see that I can change the orientation of a particular joint. But again, not necessary for this one. So I'm going to go ahead and switch that back. Primary axis is X. Click apply. So Y is up, X to X, and to X. And that's all set. Now, I am not going to control I'm not going to control the fish by controlling the joints directly. I'm going to create controls that will allow me to puppet this properly. So in order to do that, I'm going to come over to here and click curves, and I'm going to create a circle. And then you can see it right here. It's not in the right place yet, and it's not oriented properly. So I'm going to rotate this in the X 90 degrees, and now it is oriented properly, but it's not in the right place. So to get it in the right place, I'm going to hold the V key, and I'm going to use the middle mouse button, and I'm going to snap it to the vertex of the inside of this joint. And then it snapped to it, and now it is easier to control it directly from the center, but it's not scaled the right way. So I'm going to go ahead and scale up that control, and scale it up and make it larger than the fish. So that gives me something to grab onto and control. And just maybe make it about like this, and scale it up just a little bit bigger. So that's going to be how I control the fish. That's the first one, and then I'm going to create one control for each of the joints. So that first one is done, and I'm going to do a Command D. Now I have another one, and then I'm going to take that and I'm going to hold V on the keyboard and then snap it to the other one. It's not the right size, so I'm going to go ahead and scale that up, make it the right size for the control, and then I'm ready to make one more. I'm going to Command D, and now I have 3 of them. Get that Move tool, holding the V key, and then snap it to the vertex of that last joint. Doesn't need to be that large, so I can scale it down. And then I have my 3 controls. Next thing I want to do is make sure that I have fixed where the center is in this and set its position properly. So I'm going to come back over to Poly Modeling, and I'm going to orient that center of NURB Circle 1, and then I'm going to get rid of the history, construction history, and then freeze transformations. Then I'm going to go to NURB Circle 2, and I'm going to do the same thing. 1, 2, 3. Then I go to NURB Circle 3, same thing. I am centering it, getting rid of the history, and freezing transformations. Now I have my 3 controls that will be used to control the joints. Next thing I want to do is actually attach these to those. So what I do is I select NURB Circle 1, and then I'm going to hold Command on the keyboard on a Mac or Control on Windows. And now those are both selected. Don't hit Shift for this. And the order in which you select it is important. So I did the Control first and then the joint. And then I go to Constrain Parent. And then I'm going to do NURB Circle 2. And I'm going to hold Command, select Joint 2, Constrain Parent. And I'll do that one more time. Select NURB Circle 3, Command, select Joint 3, Constrain Parent. Now these are the parent of those joints. Next thing I want to do is give this some hierarchy so that when I move NURB Circle 1, NURB Circle 2 and 3 go with it. So to do that, I'm going to select NURB Circle 2, hold middle mouse button, and move it into NURB Circle 1. And then I'm going to click NURB Circle 3, hold middle mouse button, and drag it into NURB Circle 2. So then you can see that hierarchy. The last step for me is to actually bind the fish around those joints. So I select the fish, select the joints by clicking Shift. Now I have them both selected, and then I come to Skin and Bind Skin. And now those joints and that rig is bound to the skin of this. So we're going to go ahead and double check that all of this works. So if I select NURB Circle 1 and I go to my Move tool, and then I can click and drag, you'll notice that the fish is moving. And I'm going to go ahead and undo that. I don't need to view it from this view anymore, so I'm going to click this, and I'm going to turn off that X-ray and punch out. And just do a basic animation of this. So I have my controls and I have my fish, and show you how this works. So I'm going to take NURB Circle 1, and now that's going to control the whole fish. And I'm going to take it, I'm going to move it back here. So that's where I'm going to begin this, maybe a little bit further back. And then it's in my starting position. I'm going to hit S on my keyboard. That added a keyframe to the position. Now I'm animating the controls. I am not animating the joints directly, or I'm not animating the fish. So I'm just using the controls. I'm going to go to the end of time here. And let's say this was 200 frames, so I'll go all the way to the end. Where do I want this to end? Let's say I wanted it to end over here. And then I hit S on the keyboard, and now the fish will do that. But it's just kind of moving like a torpedo. It's not actually moving its fin. So I want to do the moving of the fin thing. So I'm going to start here, and then I'm going to select NURB Circle 2, which is going to do that middle one, and I want its starting position. So I'm going to hit this rotate tool, and I'm going to rotate this. Let's say I'm going to rotate it. Let me just punch in 15 degrees. So it's going to start at 15 degrees there. And then I'm going to hit S on the keyboard. Now I have a keyframe to that. And then I'm going to move forward in time as the fish is moving forward. Let's say I go to frame 12, so half a second. At half a second, I want it all the way at, let's say, -15. And then I'm going to hit S. And then I've got that little flick of the tail. Now, I could go through and do that over and over and over again, but I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to create a cycle for this. So I'm going to switch my view here. I'm going to switch to my animation view. And then in my animation view, under Windows, I'm going to go to Animation Editors, and I'm going to bring up my graph editor. So here are my keyframes. Open this up a little bit. And I'm going to click and drag and just select those. And this is for that rotation. Now, if I wanted to repeat that, easy thing I can do is I can come up here, go to Curves, and I can tell it post infinity. Just go to infinity. I can have it cycle, or I can have it oscillate. So it'll do that, but back and forth. Let's just take a look at what oscillate would look like. I say oscillate, and now I'm going to minimize this. And if I hit play, you can see it is oscillating that motion. That'll save you a lot of time in animation. And that's really the basics of how you can do that. I'm going to stop that. I'll go to the beginning of time there. And if I bring that window up again, let me bring up my animation and my graph editor again. Here's my graph editor. So I had done an oscillate. And I undid it. Now instead, I can choose post to infinity, and I can choose cycle. And let's see what that looks like. So now if I'm cycling it, do you see what it's doing? It is doing a cycle of those two motions instead of a back and forth, because it's starting here, and then it is ending there, but then it's cycling. It's doing that same thing over and over again. So that's why I wouldn't choose cycle for this. Instead, I would choose oscillate. So I'm going to go undo that and come back over here and animation graph editor. And then here under curves, post to infinity, and I'll choose that oscillate. And it's going to take those two moves that are selected here, those two keyframes, and it's going to oscillate them just all the way. And the other great thing about this is currently you can see that I'm at 200 frames, but if I stop that and let's say I go to 500 frames, and now even at 500 frames, now it swims and then just kind of stops there because earlier my keyframe ended for that position. But if I wanted to, then I can come over here, I can click NURB Circle 1. Here is that end keyframe that I had earlier. I can hit Shift and select this and just move that keyframe move that in the right place. So I can move that further. So now it is covering the same distance, but taking a longer period of time. And if we take a look at that, so you'll notice that it is slower because I had the same distance, but I gave it longer time to do it. But that's some basics on doing some rigging in Maya.